Welcome back to another Djinn Diary. If you enjoy the stories, be sure to check out for part 2. Hit the likes and share the story for a cookie. Story 1, The Babysitter from My Nightmares. A little background: I was born and raised in a very close-knit, large family. We all lived within about a mile of each other around a big park in a small Texas town. Fun fact for horror fans: this park is now where many of the town that dreaded sundown murders took place. My family was full of aunts and uncles, and I saw them at least once a week throughout my childhood. We were incredibly close, and they were completely trusted, which is important for this story. This came up recently between my older brother, my mom, and me because I finally opened up about the recurring nightmares that have plagued me for as long as I can remember. These dreams are always similar. I'm a small child, trying to escape my childhood home, while something terrifying chases me. I never actually see this something, but I feel it, like a looming presence reaching for me from the dark. It always catches me before I make it outside, and I wake up in a sweat. These nightmares seem tied to vague but oddly specific memories of a babysitter I once had. Here's where it gets strange. These memories feel almost like dreams. I can remember the details and emotions, but everything else is out of reach, including the babysitter herself. I know she was a middle-aged white woman, resemblance of Shiva the deities, but I can't recall her face, just a feeling. It's like I never truly saw it. The 2 incidents I remember clearly were not good ones. In one, whenever I got in trouble, I don't remember why, I was forced to sit outside on the back porch in a t-shirt and shorts, during winter. I remember sitting there, shivering, too scared to complain because I didn't want more trouble. The second memory is even worse. The babysitter had this game she liked to play, where she'd turn off all the lights in the house and hide in one of the back rooms. I was left in the front room, and she told me if I wanted food or to watch TV, I had to find her first. I never knew where she was hiding, and if I found her, she'd jump out, screaming like a madwoman, and chase me. I remember her laughing at my fear. I was often so terrified I'd sit near the front door, too scared to look for her, no matter how long it took or how hungry I got. There's one time I remember vividly. I was so small, scared, and whimpering as I slowly worked up the courage to walk down the dark hallway to find her. My hunger was unbearable. I checked every room, bathrooms, bedrooms, closets, nothing. She wasn't anywhere. I was standing in my parents' bedroom, trying to figure out where she could be, when I saw her. She was under the big bed, just a dark shape peeking out from beneath the bed skirt. We stared at each other, motionless. I couldn't see her face, but I knew she was smiling. She looked like a wild, crazy animal under there. Then she slid out from under the bed so fast. I screamed and ran, but the memory goes dark after that. I don't know what happened next, and that scares me as much as what I do remember. I never told anyone about these memories because they felt so distant, and I wasn't even sure they were real. Then one day, in my 20s, I mentioned the nightmares to my mom and brother. It was during one of those weeks when my brother and I were home from college, just sitting around sharing funny stories and reminiscing about kids we knew from the past. I decided to ask my mom about the babysitter. She seemed confused and said she never hired babysitters for me or my brother. Because our family was so big and close, and my mom was protective of us, she never trusted anyone but family to watch us. My aunts and grandmother were the exact opposite of the woman I remembered, loving, kind, and fun. I couldn't imagine them doing any of those things to me. My mom genuinely seemed puzzled but also slightly worried, like any mother hearing such a disturbing story. She insisted she had no idea who I could be talking about. With her certainty, and the fact that my memories were so vague, I convinced myself I must have imagined it all. But the next day, my brother brought it up again when we were driving. "Yeah, I remember that," he said, sounding concerned. "I remember seeing you get taken outside and thinking how awful it was. I don't know why we never told anyone." He also didn't remember who the woman was, but he recalled feeling helpless about the situation. He had vague memories of the terrible game she played but mentioned that she never targeted him with her torment. He remembered things I didn't, like how I often got in trouble for using my imagination to tell stories, and how the babysitter would get mad when she realized they weren't true, which is why I was kicked out of the house. It's important to note that my brother is only a year older than I am, so he would have been very young too. I've thought about bringing it up with my mom again, but I trust that she really has no idea who I'm talking about. I don't want to make her feel bad about something from so long ago that she clearly didn't know about. I just wish I could understand what happened and who this woman was. I had dreams in the past about Demon Girl, and I tried to stab her with a knife, but this felt different. My brother never mentioned it again after that, but at the time, he said he always chalked it up to being so young and misunderstanding what was going on. Story 2, old guy that lived on my street was watching me. For years, there was an old man who would sit in his garage and watch me. He was scrawny, with patchy gray hair and a gross beard. I never learned his name, so I called him David because he just looked like a David to me. I've lived in my suburban home my whole life, and my first memory of David was when I was about 10 years old. I was walking home from school, and he gave me a small wave. Since my bus stop was nearby, I saw him every day when I walked home. My mom told me that David came by shortly after I was born, rang the doorbell repeatedly, and asked to hold me when she answered. She obviously said no. She said David scowled and calmly walked back to his garage to smoke a cigar. After that, I couldn't stop seeing him. He was there every morning before school, every afternoon when I got home, every time I took my dogs for a walk, and even when I looked out the window late at night. I told my brother about how creepy it was, and he joked that David must be on house arrest, but we found out that wasn't true when he came to our door. Here's some background on my mom. She has an autoimmune disease that makes her legs and feet go numb at random times. She's doing much better now, but back then, things were worse. One day, she insisted on taking the dogs out by herself, so I stayed inside. After a minute, there was a knock at the door. I assumed it was my mom and yelled that the door was unlocked, but when the knocking got louder, I opened it to find David smiling at me. "Hey, hon, your mom fell off the porch. You might want to help her," he said in a raspy voice that gave me goosebumps. He left quickly, and I rushed outside to help my mom off the grass. My brother helped get the dogs inside, and I gave her a lecture about letting me take the dogs next time. My mom had a black eye and scratches all over her legs from tripping over a flower pot, but thankfully, she was okay. Fast forward to my 13th birthday. My mom was in the hospital, so my dad let me have a sleepover with a bunch of friends. The next day, I decided to take them to the park across from our suburb. The night before, we had watched David from the window. He was wearing a hoodie with his face covered, looking really shady. I told my friends to ignore him, but I didn't follow my own advice. "Hey, Rosie," David said quietly. My name is Rose, and only my grandfather calls me Rosie, but I never told David my name. Hi," I replied. My friends glared at me, knowing I'd messed up. "How's your mom?" "She's fine." I started to walk away, but I hesitated. "How do you know my name?" "You told me, remember?" I didn't, but I agreed anyway to get away from him. We hurried to the park, and the next day, I found a box of chocolates with a note addressed to Rosie in messy handwriting on our porch. I left it outside and told my dad. The next morning, my dad and I took the dogs out, but David was gone. A few weeks later, a new family moved into his house, and I hadn't seen him since, until yesterday. A woman from the new family knocked on our door and asked, "Does a Rosie live here?" My heart dropped. She handed me an envelope with my full name on it. The guy who lived here before said to give this to Rosie on her birthday. "It's not Rosie's birthday," I lied. "Oh, sorry. He didn't give us a date. Have a good day." My dad opened the envelope, wearing a mask just in case, joking, "What if it's filled with cocaine?" Inside was a note in red ink that simply said, "Love you." The man was later arrested for child pornography, though thankfully nothing involving me. The local news went crazy about it. David working at a county morgue, shady work ethic. I'm just glad he's gone, and I never have to see him again.